This is Let Your Voice Be Heard right here on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem.
When I go twerk hard. Throw it in a circle, blow my back out. Hey, whoa,
hey,
whoa.
Hey, yo. Okay, whoa, Stanley. Whoa. You know what? If you get your back blown out, I'm happy that you are so progressive in that area.
Whoa. Whoa.
I mean, yeah.
Whoa. My back is not getting blown out, but I support anyone who wants their backs blown out, all right? We are a sex-positive podcast over here. This is Let Your Voice Be Heard on 90.3 FM WHCR, the voice of Harlem, where you can hear Stanley Fritz, the PC on the engineers, the engineer on the PC 1s and 2s, Selena Hill, the queen of getting her back blown out. Of course,
Stanley, don't put me in your mess. Do not put me in your mess, Stanley. No. I rebuke that. No.
My mama is listening, Stanley, so
not today.
Introduction for me.
Not today.
Tiffany with the good pension.
Yes, that's it.
Every time she comes in here, Mama Tiffany, she comes in here singing some kind of gospel song.
There we go.
This morning she was like, never would have made it without my pension. And then, of course, we've got a brand new friend in the room. His name is Justin, but I'll let him do his introduction later on when he puts some drip on there. And, of course, Fire Mariah with a hat she stole from 1997 from the set of Clueless. I love this. Yes. So, guys, we're here another week. Happy We Killed a Bunch of Native American Day.
Well, Stanley, did you introduce yourself?
I thought it said Stanley Fritz, the engineer on the PC 1s and 2s.
Okay.
Oh, you can follow me, guys, on Twitter or on IG at Stan Fritz. I got a burner account, and if you're cool, I'll give you the account, even though I forget to tweet from there.
Well, thank you, Stanley, for that very colorful introduction of us all. Most of that was fabricated, FYI, but I'm
really?
still
What
happy.
parts?
A lot. I'm still happy to be here. Guys, my name is Selena Hill on Instagram and Twitter. You can follow me at Miss Selena Hill. And if you're listening live, I highly suggest you check out my Instagram story if you want to see me acting a fool last night at family karaoke. It's the reason why my voice is this little hoarse. As well as why I had back spasms.
So I wasn't.
Stanley at family karaoke, that is.
all right.
I didn't stretch before I, got into it.
Well, that's you, I mean, all right, cool.
Nonetheless.
I'm Tiffany, Tiflis B.
What's the B for? Pension.
Brown.
The last time you growled like that, when a woman was giving an intro, it was problematic, Stanley.
Uh-oh.
Let's remember that.
When was the last time I growled like that?
You be doing a lot, but go ahead, Tiffany.
Wait, where did I growl for last time?
So, Tiflis B, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at TIFFLIZB.
Heard you.
Yes, and I'm excited to be here. We have an exciting show, so yeah.
Yes, and we also have with us Justin D. Jerkins. He is a writer and producer from Creative Tribe Media. And he's a longtime fan of Let Your Voice Be Heard. Welcome to the show, Justin.
Thank you, guys. Excited to be here. What's going on?
We are doing well. We have a great show lined up. We're going to be talking about why not only Pete Buttigieg, and a lot of other white moderate candidates running for president are lying MFers, as according to The Root. There was a very scathing essay published a few days ago written by Michael Harriot, and he basically said Pete Buttigieg is a lying MFer, and to me, that sort of like opens up the gateway for us to talk about why is it that white moderates continue to pander and they're not really trying to like court the black vote. It seems like they're just like speaking directly to a very white progressive base, and they're keeping people of color out of the conversation. So we're going to talk about that. And the fact that even if they're doing that, a lot of them are like doing really well in the polls, hence Joe Biden. So we have a lot to talk about there. We also need to talk about what's going on with Gabrielle Union. Our girl apparently got fired from America's Got Talent. We need to discuss. And then another woman of color was actually brutally sexually assaulted and killed after she ignored someone being catcalled, after she was catcalled. So we have a lot to talk about. And of course, guys, if you want to let your voice be heard, you can do so by calling us up at 212-650-6903. or you can leave a comment live on our Facebook page. So if you go to facebook.com/letyourvoicebeheard, we are live there. Please leave your comments and we will read them on air. And you can also tweet us at BeHeard_radio. And with that, we're going to go on a quick break. Don't go anywhere. This is Let Your Voice Be Heard. And shout out to Darren Mack, who's already watching, Ebony Hickson, who's watching as well, and Don L.
We are back on Let Your Voice Be Heard on 90.3 FM WHCR, the voice of Harlem. If you are just tuning in, this is Stanley Fritz. I'm here with Selena Hill, Tiffany Brown, and of course, just incredible. I just made up that nickname. Isn't it amazing?
I like that nickname.
You're very welcome, kind sir. And listen, guys, we are here to have an action-packed show, and we are doing it first with the News Roundup, where we talk about things that make you laugh, cry, curse, flip a table, or maybe Millie rock confusedly. Selena, please anchor that News Roundup ship.
Oh, thank you for that, Stanley. Yeah, so as I mentioned before we went on break, a lot of people are questioning why Gabrielle Union was abruptly let go from America's Got Talent, including her own husband, Dwayne Reid. He actually put out, I think it was an Instagram video where he was asking the executives at NBC what exactly went wrong. So we know that reportedly she was talking about how there was it was like a toxic culture, and like things were problematic there. For instance, I think Jay Leno made a joke about of somebody who was Korean, and then I think there was this young black 10-year-old rapper, and they said, oh, he's not really going to work for the premise of this show, etc. So she was just using her position of power as well as her voice to speak out against things that were controversial and uncomfortable. Tiffany, what do you make of this?
So it was like sad to see because I just feel like Gabrielle Union has been on like this high with they just had the baby, and she's been really just like out there. I mean, she's always been around, but I feel like she's finally coming into her own, and people are starting to really see like her magical self. But I was also reading, like, when the way that America's Got Talent worked, like, everything kind of goes through Simon Cowell. So, like, it was also just a culture of, like, he would just be literally smoking on set. Like, in a room like this, just be puffing away, smoking. And she's like, I'm allergic
tobacco or marijuana?
Like, cigarettes.
Oh.
Like, just smoking cigarettes. And, like, she was complaining about that. And what really got me was how people were complaining about her hair and saying that she was changing her hair too much and it wasn't really, like, connecting with the audience. And they would slip her and Julianne Hough, which is another white woman who clearly was like, I ain't got no problems. Like, that's Gabrielle Union. So we see how our white allies do. Anyways, but I was really like frustrated because I'm like, I feel like so many black women, everyday black women, go through this when it comes to our hair or just being too vocal and sticking up. Like, and you saw that she wasn't even sticking up for like quote unquote black issues. She voiced her concern when it was like the Koreans or this young black kid. So like you could just see like she was just aware like, no, this is some crazy stuff that you guys are doing. You can't be perpetuating these sort of stereotypes.
Right.
Justin, what's your take on this whole controversy?
Well, I mean, Nick Cannon kind of warned us about NBC already when he used to host it. Also, we had the NBC protected Matt Lauer for how many years, and he came out all his issues. So it was no surprise that it happened. It's just unfortunate that black women still has to go through this. I mean, it's reports that they're saying that your hair was too black. And that actually started a movement on Twitter. People showing support, a lot of actresses showing support to Gabrielle Union. So I think it's always going to suck, but then when it's a learning moment, NBC will be held accountable ultimately. And it's actually talked that she might go ahead and like seek legal action against
Get your
NBC.
bag, girl.
Yeah.
Stanley?
When you work in white spaces, you got to expect some white stuff. And that white stuff might differ depending on what part of the spectrum of whiteness they're on, but it's going to go down. So when I heard this happen, I wasn't surprised. Right. This is a white-run institution with a whole bunch of high-powered white people who are deeply motivated by money. And if you do something that makes them feel uncomfortable, they have the cash to slip it under the table, eat a lawsuit, do one or two like press conferences or events where they have a diversity expert there, and then it goes right away until the next issue pops up. Because really, NBC should have been canceled when they found out that they was defending Matt Lauer, and he had a remote lock where you could lock the door from the inside, and people couldn't get out. Right. We really shouldn't have been looking at them after that, but we're still here, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, Ebony Small, she actually just chimed in on our Facebook. She says, Nick Cannon sure did warn us. I mean, when will we, get the note? But I feel like when it comes to black entertainers, especially those in Hollywood, you have to take, the opportunities given because they're like far and in between. Yeah. So it's like, we want to cancel NBC. But then again, how many people will lose jobs? How many people of color actually work behind the scenes in the production room? So it's like, if we don't support these large institutions, then it's going to affect us. Like, there's going to be some backlash. So, just moving things along. I mentioned before we went on break about Ruth George. She was a University of Illinois college student. She was 19, and she was reportedly killed after she ignored a man's cattle calls in a parking garage. This is a news story that is definitely breaks a lot of people's hearts. She was an Indian American woman, a woman of color. And Stanley, I remember you telling me on the call that you were actually hearing people defend her murderer.
Well, yeah. So I don't know. I saw some ridiculous comments on Twitter and on Facebook, and one of them was a guy said, "Yo, I'm not defending him, but saying hi goes a long way," and that is really problematic. And it doesn't matter what she would have said because she would have been in danger. It doesn't matter what women say. Women shouldn't have to say anything if they don't want to say anything, but when they asked the killer why he did it, he said, because, she rejected my advances. She didn't talk to me. We got a serious problem when men are reacting to rejection in this way. We got a lot of work to do.
Tiffany, as a woman yourself, how does this make you feel?
I think I tweeted it after I read that story. I was like, oh, yeah, I'm really going to buy a stun gun. And the first sign of pushback, I'm zapping y'all. And then I'm going to run.
Zap them.
I feel like that's the state that we are in as women, because no one is teaching men to respect women's no's, and they feel entitled to our bodies and our conversation. It gets to the point, even when a guy does say good morning to me, I'll say it back, but I make sure I say it in a tone that he kind of could pick up. I don't want any further interaction with you. And even then, that doesn't go the right way. Go far, because this guy, he followed her off the train and into the parking garage. So it was that's at least 30 minutes or however long, where he could have clicked in his head, let me leave this girl alone. And he's like, no, because he felt that entitled to her time and her space. And I feel like no woman should have to feel I have to get a stun gun, or I have to get maced, or I have to take defensive classes, because men are not being taught to respect women.
Yeah.
Justin, so it turns out that the alleged murderer, he had just gotten out of jail, I think December 2018. He had did 2 years of a 6-year prison sentence. And, back on the streets and again, committing a crime, this time against a woman.
Yeah, I think you have to look at the system, the justice system, when it comes to that. 2 years out of 6 years. What I think, he wanted to hurt someone. He was going to hurt someone regardless. I just think that was what triggered him. So again, you have to look to see why he got out for only serving 2 years. What was the process like? Why was he back on the streets? I think it's an unfortunate situation, but men have to hold their friends accountable. And a lot of times you have men who know is wrong, but when their friends are, even like you said, Tiffany, when you know that they might continue to pursue you, they have to have their other friends say, yo, chill out. And they don't do that a lot. They laugh, they joke, they keep it moving. So until men hold men accountable, this problem is going to just keep growing.
Yeah, that's a great point. I know Stanley wanted to chime in.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in real quick to pick up on a comment about the justice system. I just want to say prisons do not work. Putting people in prisons do not work. The problem with this man who viciously assaulted this woman, that goes much deeper than that. In our prison system, 11 times out of 10 make issues with people 15 times worse. And we really need to address that. And we can't look at prison as a way to deal with any problems. Selena?
Speaking of people in prison who are not being rehabilitated, Bill Cosby came out very recently saying that, again, he has no remorse for allegedly victimizing up to 60 women. He was only convicted for one woman for giving her Quaalude and then Quaalude. Thank you. I said Quaalude. I'm sorry. A Quaalude and raping her. And he said, "Look, I didn't do it." Yeah. And he's been comparing himself to political prisoners. I read in a previous interview he likened himself to Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, and even Gandhi. And I'm like, no one is targeting targeting you for your political and social views. That's just not the case there. You're not a freedom fighter. And on top of that, the respectability politics and that rhetoric that he was pushing a few years ago, like, that's why I think a lot of us in the black community are kind of like, look, Bill, you need to do your time and take a seat. Because, like, you can't play the race card now when a few years ago you were telling black people, pull up your pants and stop naming your kids Shaniqua and whatever. Like, I don't know. I just feel like there's a lot of hypocrisy, and he's not feeling any type of redemption.
We talked about this a little bit on the call too, Selena, and I was saying that Bill Cosby is 5,000 years old. I wish that we didn't have to put him in a prison, but he refuses to.
Where should he go, Stanley?
No, I mean, like, we need to reimagine how we hold people accountable. But Bill Cosby does not want to be held accountable. So it's like you really have no other option but to put him in a prison.
Right.
Something happened to him a long, long time ago, maybe in the 1800s when he was born, that made him think that he could
That's
victimize
being
people
ageist,
like
Stanley.
this. Well, and true. Yeah. Listen, I got the young drip still. When I get old, I'll think about ageism. But no, like, Bill Cosby is like somebody, he was victimized as a young child, and now he's a monster, and now he's in the system, and he's in there because of himself.
Yep.
Tiffany, before we give you time to give comments, so Ebony Small, she chimed in. She said, "Bad Bill is back at it again. I can't with him." Tiffany?
I like that. Bad Bill. I definitely think Bill Cosby is probably operating under the thinking that, like, everybody was doing it back in the 60s and the 70s.
Yeah.
And why am I the only one being held accountable? So in his mind, that is some sort of, like, political prisoner sort of ideology, which is really not. But I feel like Bill Cosby, he's gonna die on this hill of that he didn't do anything wrong, and that he was really just trying to uplift and, you know, help the black community, even when he was shaming us and telling us to pull up our pants and stop naming our kids Shaniqua and this, that, and the third. But I also do think, I feel like a lot of black progressive or young millennial progressives are, like, leery of Bill Cosby, but, like, people who are my parents' age, they might be also subscribing to, like, he's been targeting because, you know, he's about to buy ABC or
NBC.
one of those shows. Like,
That hasn't been corroborated.
right.
No, he was never going to buy him.
Yeah, no.
I mean, I know that, but I kind of feel like,
it's
you
a
know,
conspiracy. Justin, where do you
conspiracy.
stand?
Well, I mean, he's maintaining his innocence, you know, and like Tiffany said, when you think that you're innocent and people are saying, no, it was wrong, but you said, well, everyone else did it, and then now all of a sudden you're going to pull that black card. And he's not the first person to do that, kind of disassociate himself with the black community until he needs to now say, I need your help. I need you guys to stand by me. So, like he said, Bill Cosby is how old? He's set in his ways. He's in prison. He's never going to change his mind, and he's always going to say, it was fine because it was back then. Times change.
Right. So I just wanted to chime in. So John Mermelstein, he left a comment on our Facebook Live agreeing with Stanley's statements a few minutes ago when we talked about the man who was charged with killing a woman after catcalling her. John says, saying this guy should have served the full 6 years seemed like the wrong response to this tragedy. And I did want to thank you, John, for that comment. I did want to throw it back there because honestly, like, I had like a really controversial and conflicting view about that guy too.
Talk
right?
your truth.
So, all right. So let me just like divert real quick. So there was another incident that happened in Alabama. There was a black sheriff who was shot down by a white 18-year-old who happened to be the son of a deputy sheriff. And after he killed this black sheriff who had an outstanding reputation in his community for like decades, black people in that community were saying, we need to pray for the sheriff's family, but we also need to pray for the killer's family. And when he said that, no, he said that he's black. And then it reminded me of when Dylan Roof shot those praying church members. They were saying, well, we got to pray for him too. And then again with Amber Geiger, we were saying we got to pray for her. And to me, when I was thinking about this, I'm like, people always want to pray for white murderers. What about this black man who was just released from prison, who allegedly sexually assaulted and killed Ruth George? Should we pray for him too?
Well,
where's that same compassion? Where's that same energy? That literally was my response.
That was your response?
Yeah.
Well, you know, like, let's differentiate a couple of things first. What's happening in Alabama, what happened at the Dylan Roof, what happened at the Amber Geiger, in my opinion, I'll say, is a lot of like Southern slave mentality of like being paternalistic to white people because white people are too weak and frail to be held accountable, and it's not healthy and it's inappropriate. you can have grace for people. You should have prayer for people. But people, like, prayer doesn't, like, forgiveness and grace doesn't come without accountability. And when people refuse to be held accountable or actually fight being held accountable, like Amber Geiger did, and like Dylan Root didn't care about, then you don't need to give them grace. So that's very problematic. Now, this man over here, as a black man going through the system inherently and purposely ignored all the warnings and the signs to help this man before we got to this point. So what you're seeing is somebody who the system didn't fail. The system performed exactly the way they wanted to. He goes into a prison, probably is traumatized even more, comes out with a whole bunch of other issues now, and he takes all this feeling of powerlessness and probably just years of needed therapy out on this innocent victim. So now you have two people victimized and two generations at minimum who have been impacted. And that has everything to do with racism, and it has everything to do with sexism and patriarchy and the way that it impacts the lives of black and brown people. So.
No, I mean, Stanley, well said. I definitely feel that. And I've always felt a conflict because I feel like our society shows so much compassion towards those who happen to be white and commit atrocities. And I feel like when it comes to black men, we're the first, a lot of times, we hold our own accountable. And if we don't, the system does, and they will throw them under the jail.
Black people are not allowed to be nuanced. That's why.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like you have to be, this is who we are. That's why that we're not giving grace. And white people, they're nuanced. They have feelings. There was this thing going on. Billy wasn't hugged. Sally didn't get along with her dad. But when Tiffany or Stanley do something, it's because we're animalistic and we're savages.
Right.
And we have all bought into this oppressive, colonized idea about black and brown people too, which is why we have to work on our own colorism and anti-blackness.
Yeah.
Yeah, well said on that. I know we do have to take a quick break, but Tiffany, I did want to just give you a few seconds just to chime in. I mean, what we were just talking about was really heavy.
I really think what Stanley said was right on the nose, and I think oftentimes it does feel like black people are harder on each other because we feel this notion that we have to live up to a certain standard, and then when we do a bad act, we have to make sure, no, we are trying to hold each other accountable, and that accountability means jail or prison and things like that. But like Stanley said, we have to unlearn a lot of these negative behaviors that has been ingrained in us and seems to be normalized in us. And I do think it's unfortunate that this young man went down this path and killed this young woman. He needs to be held accountable. But I think it also can be both. And I feel like a lot of people don't realize it can't be both. We want him to be held accountable, but also understand that this brother needs help as well. And the accountability is not solely based on sending him back to prison for the rest of his life, most likely.
On that note, we do have to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere. When we come back, we're talking about all the mediocre, white, moderate men running for president. This is Let Your Voice Be Heard.
We are back on Let Your Voice Be Heard on 90.3 FM WHCR, the voice of Harlem. If you were just tuning in, this is Stanley Fritz. I'm deep in my petty bag, mad at these average white moderates trying to get some clout with the Negroes and they failing hard body. If you were just tuning in, I'm here with Selena Hill, Tiffany Brown, and of course, Just Incredible. And if you ever forget our most amazing intern, her name is Fire Mariah, and her fashion levels are drip beyond drip. So, guys, we are here because we are really aggressively annoyed by a white moderate named Pete Buttigieg. Or maybe I am the one who's aggressively annoyed by Pete Buttigieg. But anyways, what you should know about Pete Buttigieg. Pete Buttigieg is a white man who came out of the closet 4 years ago, and he is the mayor in South Bend, Indiana, a town that has about 90,000 people in it. So pretty much there are more people in the assembly district of East Harlem than there are in South Bend, Indiana. But whatever, not relevant. Pete Buttigieg is running for president because reasons, and he can do that because white. And while running for president, he has really started to attack some of the more progressive candidates like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. But Pete Buttigieg has really been ticking people off. And then he recently ticked off a lot more people with the melanated skin when he had some comments to make about poor black kids growing up in poor black communities. He feels like they're not succeeding for a very particular reason. And these are some things we have heard from our ashy friends who just came out of prison that don't have a clear analysis. But now this is a white man saying it in a panel full of other white men talking about poor black kids. I'll put the clip on for you right now.
The kids need to see evidence that education is going to work for them, right? So you see a lot of parts of town.
That's part of the motivation.
Yeah, because you're motivated because you believe that at the end of your educational process, there's a reward, there's a stable life, there's a job. And there are a lot of kids, especially the lower income minority neighborhoods, who literally just haven't seen it work. There isn't somebody they know personally
and I think that's
who testifies to the value of education. So yeah, you bet.
So yeah, that was Pete Buttigieg's comments. You heard it here first, poor blacks. You have never seen a successful person in your ghetto. That's why you don't want to go to college. When I was growing up in East New York, Brooklyn, and living next door to a doctor, and growing up in Brownsville, and living next door to a nurse and to a lawyer, I thought to myself, what does success look like? Because this nurse and doctor may have a degree and may be nursing and doctoring and lawyering, but that's not really a good example. I need a white man to show me the way. And that's what I went looking for. Selena, what did you think about the comments?
Okay, so just the comments itself, I mean, extremely problematic. I mean, I get it. Mayor Pete made these comments back in 2011, but again, he has had so much education. He's had the best of school, the best of privilege, the best that privilege can bring you, and still, I think that he was like lying by omission. The fact that you did not acknowledge systemic racism and how that plays a role into education and equality, I mean, he knows better than that. And in fact, there were some statistics that were brought up in the article that we're going to talk about. So Michael Harriot from The Root, he pointed out that the majority minority schools received $23 billion less in funding than majority white schools. And in fact, black students in Indiana, where Buttigieg was mayor, they get disciplined more harshly than white students. And on top of that, the unemployment rate for black college graduates is twice as high as it is for the unemployment rate for white grads. So it's not just the fact that, you don't see, black people don't have role models in our communities. No, there are systemic barriers of oppression that have, excluded us from getting access to capital, to education, and just quality of life. And at the time that he made these comments, Barack Obama was president. That was the biggest and greatest role model black kids have ever seen. And I still remember this 4-year-old black child knew the name of the president during his administration. And I was like, wow, when I was 4 years old, I didn't know who the president was. But every single black child knew Barack Obama. Yeah. So, yeah.
All right, Selena went and got in her bag, too.
Period. Who over here?
I'm just closing my agenda.
So, again, Barack Obama was the president at the time.
Hussein,
and I think Barack Hussein, okay, got me sounding like a Trump supporter when they say the middle name. But anyways, at that round table, I think that was like a Tea Party round table that he was sitting at when he made those comments. So it also goes to show you the thinking of Pete Buttigieg to me, because how can you say this when we had the first black president? And we also saw the rise of the Tea Party because it was direct response because of Barack and his blackness and being in office. And I think it also goes to show you that have you ever learned anything about black history, how we fought for Brown v. Board of Education and things like that, or how we had to fight for desegregation of schools? So to say that we have no role models, or we don't value education, or we don't care about education, is an outright lie. And it just goes to show you how much you don't know about black people and our history as it pertains to slavery in America.
Oh, so y'all big mad about this, Justin? Well, hold on, Justin. Before you continue, one of your friends commented, Garrick Wade. He said, in my neighborhood, that's true. Where I'm from, that's exactly what happened. Progress wasn't promoted. Is he right?
He's right in a way, but I believe that it's never a good idea for white privileged men to talk on issues they know nothing about. So even with Mayor Pete, he had come back from he has so much education, but it shows the difference of education and what he was taught. So he's hailed as this very smart person, but he wasn't smart enough to know that wasn't a good statement to say. So it's never a good idea for them to talk on our issues without, going back to what Selena says, bringing up racism. So when the conversation doesn't start with racism, you can't put the blame on our lack of enthusiasm when you have the first black president in office.
No, absolutely. And I mean, to me, why wasn't an expert in education, particularly communities of color, invited to that table? They were just sitting there pontificating.
Pontificating?
Yes.
I mean, maybe there wasn't an expert. What happens in a lot of progressive spaces, in my experience, is they'll bring in a white expert to talk about an issue that directly impacts communities of color. That's pretty much par for the course. But we do have a caller on the line. Michael, please let your voice be heard.
Hi, my name is Michael. I'm from Staten Island. I'm also an Army veteran, a big supporter of Bernie Sanders, and a white veteran supporting Black Lives Matter and people like Colin Kaepernick. And one thing I've noticed is that you have so many white candidates like Peter Buttigieg, Joe Biden, who are running on these platforms that they're all for helping minority communities when their history is the exact opposite. Joe Biden supported the 1996 crime bill, which was a complete disaster for minority communities, especially the black community. Pete Buttigieg is just, I feel he's out of touch with minority communities because he never really been a part of them. They dealt with them. Bernie Sanders, you have a candidate who has a long track record of being part of the civil rights movement, understanding what minorities go through, especially with the systematic racism and a criminal justice system that has failed the communities, as well as an education system that has been so underfunded, only favors white community just the way it's been, and yet these white centrist candidates call all these experts and telling people how it is and saying that they know better when they really don't.
Michael, thank you very much for your comment. I wanted to just bring it in real quick, see folks have any reactions to that.
Yeah, no, I mean, for the most part, I definitely think that I agree that, white moderate candidates are either pandering to, the black base and trying to court black voters because, we're important and everyone understands why black voters are so important and crucial, especially when it comes to the 2020 election. But to me, I think you have to really walk it like you talk it. Like, we want to see those receipts. We want to see your stats. We want to see your history and what is it that you've been doing in our communities.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that call. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, thank you very much, Michael, for calling in. If you guys want to call in with a question, concern, no curse words, our number is 212-650-6903. Again, that's 212-650-6903. And I want to make sure we just, kind of like make sure we're pushing this story forward. But after Pete Buttigieg said that, Michael Harriot of The Root wrote a piece called "Pete Buttigieg is a Lying MFer." And in there, he said something that really stood out to me. He said, Pete Buttigieg doesn't want to change anything. He just wants to be something. I want you guys to sit on that comment for a little bit as we go on this quick little break. But when we come back, I want to ask a question is, why are so many people so obsessed with these white moderates? Pete Buttigieg is soaring in Iowa. Joe Biden still has a strong block of black support, mostly from old black voters. People like them. What's happening? All right, we are back on Let Your Voice Be Heard on 90.3 FM WHCR, the voice of Harlem. If you were at a party and someone calls themselves a white ally, but they don't play Juicy J or Gucci Mane, they are probably lying because they got to play the music to make you feel comfortable. And if they don't know what burr means, then they are definitely trouble. This is Stanley Prince. I'm here with Selena Hill, of course, Tiffany Brown, and Just Incredible. Fire Mariah's on the PC 1s and 2s, but on the phone and on cameras, making sure you can see us clearly. And I want to say I am very happy to be here today. I want to shout out everybody who's watching on Facebook Live: Garrick Wade, Julianne Hoffenberg, Sharon Mills, BB Mendez, Mark Neri, Nadia Stevenson, my big sister Florentine Fritz, all the way from St. Martin. Thank you guys for tuning in. And I want you guys to know we are having a great conversation about white moderates and why it seems so many people likes them. Pete Buttigieg, a guy I think we all in here just expressed that we had some not so great feelings about, is surging in the polls in Iowa and New Hampshire. Granted, those states have about 3 black people combined in each of those regions, so that might explain it. But Joe Biden, in the most recent poll, still has 43% of black people supporting him, or at least black people that were polled supporting him, which means your mama, your auntie, probably your grandma, and that one dude that claims he's a progressive but doesn't know anything about politics and thinks that Joe Biden is progressive. But they're supporting him. Why? Justin?
Because they miss Obama. I think the effect of Obama is still rubbing off on Joe. He mentions it a lot during the debate. We created the memes. They had their little bromance. Everyone loved Joe Biden. So
Uncle Joe.
Exactly.
It's terrible at this point.
Yeah, so that's definitely has helped him, is going to help him until people realize he's not Obama. Really listen to his policies, still look at his history, his track record. But unfortunately, that's all they're going on.
Yeah. Tiff?
I think it's the devil that they know. And Warren and Bernie probably makes them feel uncomfortable because they are just not familiar with socialism or socialism-like politics. So I think it's up to us as black millennials to really push our parents to get into that realm.
Oh, wait. How was Thanksgiving?
Oh, Thanksgiving was fine. My parents don't play those games.
They're not Team Biden?
No.
She's like, they better not be.
No, exactly. At least I haven't expressed it to me yet. But anytime my mom goes to vote, she always asks me who to vote. I'll be like literally in the booth with her, picking out her candidates. But anyways.
That's legal.
Right, I was like, hold up.
Hey, listen, I'm just offering recommendations. So
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Right. So I think they're just used to those sort of candidates. Those are the candidates you normally see that comes to like your local like parade, or who has attached themselves to like black candidates. So I think it's just a familiarity. And I feel like most people, they don't always get into the weeds of policies or politics of the person. They just kind of know like name recognition. So I think a lot of times they just, Joe Biden, Obama, So I think it's easy to associate those two. I don't really understand why Pete Buttigieg is polling, but I'm pretty sure that has a lot to do with the LGBTQ white community. That's probably pushing up those numbers. So yeah.
Selena, I got a bit of an edited question for you. Why do moderate candidates resonate more with black voters than Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders?
I'm glad you asked. And the reason is, I think, to Tiffany and Justin's point, Biden, he's safe, he's familiar. I think one factor is the fact that when you have candidates who've spent decades in the black establishment in those spaces. I'm talking about the black church with prominent black leaders like Obama and rest in peace Elijah Cummings. I think that it creates this familiarity that just makes us feel more comfortable. Also, number two, I think that directly to your question, I think that, I'm not sure if black voters, especially older black voters who are less optimistic about revolutionary change, believe that someone like Warren will actually be able to execute all of these plans and big ideas. Yeah. I mean, Warren is someone who endorses reparations. Do black older folk think that she's going to do that? Absolutely not. In 2008, my great uncle, who is about 90 years old today, told me he did not vote for Barack Obama in the primary because a black man would never become president in his United States. He is someone who lived through Jim Crow. He is someone who grew up in North Carolina, and he is someone who has experienced decades of segregation and systematic oppression and racism that we as millennials cannot directly relate to on a firsthand experience. So I think that when someone comes in and be like, look, I'm going to give y'all $1,000 a month, or I'm going to create reparations and I'm going to support HBCUs, they're like, I don't believe that. Let's be pragmatic, because at the end of the day, they have more on the line if Republicans come into office and they want to vote for someone who is safe and who they think can beat Trump.
Damn, Slim, that was a bar. She came prepared this week.
Yeah.
It's funny because
she's on fire.
BB Mendez, one of our favorite listeners here, she said Joe is a no for me. I know BB well enough to know that she does not trust anything that Joe Biden has to say or offer to the game. I know Tiffany well enough to know that she thinks the same thing. Can white moderates be trusted by communities of color?
No.
Justin.
Oh,
damn.
sorry. Go, Justin.
No, I mean,
sorry. Jump the gun there.
I wonder what Tiffany thinks.
Right. I mean, we can only hope so. But what is trust when it comes to politics? I think you have to look at when it is moderate, they are kind of walking that fine line of bipartisanship. So people have to remember that we might have to take some L's because they have to now work with Republicans, and we see this power struggle that's going on. So I hope that we can trust them, but I kind of agree with Tiffany. Like, the stakes are so high that I don't think they will have the black community's best interests at heart.
We talking about trusting white moderates. I barely trust white people.
Okay.
White people got to work real hard to get my trust.
Okay.
Shoot. Like, you think I trust Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders? Hell no, they're white, which means they're inherently problematic, and which means that they are more likely than not to side with what they think will help their people than it'll help us. White people have historically done this, but let me get out of my bag. This ain't about me. Tiff, can we trust white moderates?
Absolutely not. And I feel like with whatever election it is, I think they show themselves. When anytime there's a police shooting, I think they reveal themselves. I think us saying that we can trust white moderates, especially in this election when the stakes are so high, I think it's flawed. And I think we really have to depend on our elders to be like, listen, I know you. I see you, young white millennial. You got a lot of faith in these white people, but these white people have taught me something different, okay? Like your great uncle that lived through Jim Crow and all these other, things. I just feel like we cannot be so naive to think that we can trust white moderates. I do think we are in a position to hold white moderates more accountable, because a lot of them are talking about reparations and, police brutality, but I don't necessarily think that should be translated or confused with trust, because the moment that they can let us down, they will let us down. And I think we need to understand
they
that.
Always do. Selena?
I agree, but I'm going to push back a little bit, because honestly, I don't think any politician can be trusted. Right. Obama was moderate. Did we trust him?
Yeah.
So, yes, maybe no. Look, the nature of politics
Obama.
as a system is corrupt and dirty. Any person that gets into this game, they're going to get their hands dirty.
Yeah.
So that's a different question. Now, if you're someone who believes, like Stanley, that all white people need to be vetted because they can't be trusted, then I could understand why you would say you wouldn't trust white moderates. But at the end of the day, politicians are politicians. It is what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, no, Tiffany, Justin?
Yeah.
Look,
It's going, like you said, when you get into politics, you're going to have to get your hands dirty, so it's unfortunate, but if that's just the nature of the game, it's not changing no time soon. It's been around for all these years, so that's just how it is.
It is what it is and what's going to be. So, guys, we do want to get one more caller in, and we have Haja on the line. Haja, let your voice be heard.
Okay, I heard you talk about the flaws of the candidates for the Democrats. So I'm wondering if anybody has any thinks about who the strongest candidate is, because I'm sure Republicans are listening to this program too. And so, who do you think is the strongest of the candidates, instead of concentrating on the flaws of the candidates? Thank you.
That's a really good question, Haja. I was going to answer it by myself, but what I'll do is I'll give everyone just give a name real quick. Justin?
Kamala.
Warren.
Selena?
Bernie, baby.
I'm personally supporting Elizabeth Warren. I think Bernie Sanders has the best chance because these white boys will get fired up for him and it will turn out.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that happened was that white turnout was the highest it had been in almost 10 years when Donald Trump ran. Now, Bernie Sanders is real shaky with the black folks, and I don't like his stance on reparations, but I think that if he was a nominee, he would win. I'd be much happy with Elizabeth Warren, but I would not be upset if it was Bernie. So that's where I stand. So, guys, we do have to start wrapping up this conversation, and I guess I want to ask you one more question so we can kind of close this out in a way that is productive. Which Democrat... Oh, never mind. We just did it. Yeah, so let me say it this way, just to kind of close out this conversation. We have been through this game a million times. Some of us have been through a couple of presidential cycles. So I've been through Kerry, Obama, Obama squared, and Satan. And now I'm going through this one. And like some of us have been through 4 or 5. Some of us have been through 1 or 2. And they always say the stakes are extremely high. This time, the stakes are extremely high. Yep. I also always say I would vote for a warm bottle of Hennessy that actually had horse pee in it before I voted for Trump. And I think that feeling is still the same. But if you are going to make sure you're voting, and you're voting in a way that is not just important but informed and with power, make sure you are doing your research. And that means don't just go to people's campaign websites and read the polished, curated stuff they have there for you, but go to factcheck.org and see how many of their statements are actually true. Go to Vox.com and get like some down-to-earth breakdown of their policies. Can we actually afford to give Medicare for all people as soon as someone is elected into office? No, actually. It would take a couple years to phase in, but most of these candidates won't tell you that. Mm-hmm. Can you do this and free college tuition without raising taxes on the poor? Yeah, you could, but you're going to have to take a lot of money from the rich, and you're going to have to cut funding from the military. Is that going to be easy? No, it's not. Can you actually give people $1,000 a month to live on? Yeah, sure. But where are you getting that money from, and will it take away from other benefits? It is important that we don't just cast a vote this year, but we cast a vote that is filled with knowledge, anger, and direction, because if we're not directed and don't have a clear goal about what we want to accomplish in this coming election day, the dirty white man will win, and the politics of dirty white supremacy will continue to prosper. So with that being said, guys, we got to get out of here. We hope you have a wonderful Sunday. We all go back to work on Monday, or maybe I just do. We'll see you next week.